mon frère. Viens ma sœur, à l'Alliance française.
À l'Alliance française.
Venez, venez,
Venez, apprendre le français. Venez, à l'Alliance française. Venez, apprendre le français. Venez à l'Alliance française.
Je vous invite à venir.
Venez, apprendre le français. Venez à l'Alliance française.
La plus largement appris après l'anglais. Les Français disent langue étrangère, la plus largement appris
après l'anglais.
La connaissance du français ouvre des portes, des entreprises en France
comme à l'étranger.
La connaissance du français ouvre des portes, des entreprises en France
comme à l'étranger.
Le français, la langue de la culture,
la langue internationale pour la cuisine,
la mode, les théâtres, les habitués, la danse et l'architecture. Le français, la langue de la culture, la langue internationale.
Welcome back from that break. That is a song from Alliance Française. And Faisal, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
And there was a big problem of the people who went to France. Many of the people from the Anglophone countries didn't understand French and didn't speak French. And so they were relying mostly on the translations. And translation can, things can disappear. Thankfully, for some people who were close, had engineer Peter Nyeko, who was able to break things down. I've had a lot of comments coming from so many other people who were saying, no, it was difficult, we couldn't hear. And do you think that it's important for Africans to start learning French now?
Of course, if you want to do, if you want to pick up, again, it's part of the whole package of starting a new relationship. To be honest, if you want to be, if you want to trade with someone, you have to learn their language. As much as they are also struggling to learn our language. It's not easy for French people to speak English. It's not easy because they're very proud. There's a very, very particular language that they are very proud of as part of their culture, but also part of their, their linguistic background. So seeing Macron speaking English because he has realized, and that's really bending the knee for a president. Really, like he knows that yes, there are Francophone people who don't even understand the one word of English, but there are also these very many English people who he wants also to reach. He wants his message to be clear, and he says it in English. So I think it's very important for us as well to start thinking, how do we learn French? How do we start? You can't work with people if you can't understand each other.
There is a thinking that people have been talking about this, and the French embassy has been pushing this quite a bit ever since, that people should learn French, and speak French. I want to hear from you, what does it necessarily mean to the music and music business, music creative people in the business, and of course people like you who are festival programmers? Do you think it's important? And what does it mean? Would you start teaching French at?
No, I'm learning French. No, I wouldn't do that because Alliance is here. Alliance is here, and we have to support them as to have more students. And I think they are ready. But I'm also very proud, and I don't know how the statistics are, but I'm very proud to see how many Ugandans are doing their best to learn French. It's really great to see that the numbers are increasing. Of course, we had this COVID situation, but there are many Ugandans who want to learn French, and it's a good thing. But also from our programming perspective, as programmers, we face a lot of challenges if you're working with French artists and you don't speak French. First of all, like communication is in French. Of course, nowadays we try to do Google, but still there is that missing understanding of the language and the text. Contracts are always in French. If you're dealing with French agencies, they do their best to translate them, but it's also difficult for them. So if you know French, it's much easier. But I've also understood that really collaborations are always about conversation. And you cannot really have a conversation with someone who speaks a different language than you are. And that's why it's difficult, and it has been difficult for French companies and French artists to work with Anglophone artists or Anglophone countries, because there is not easy conversation. I have some of my friends who have been, now that I speak a little bit of French, I understand a bit of French. But I've had some of my folks whom, we could do business and they like what we're doing. They would like to do, but I don't speak French. And I say, Faisal, you have to learn French. You have to learn French. And I understand, I feel we want to do things, but the language is a barrier. And how do we break that barrier? By helping each other to learn each other's language and to make sure that we can keep up and see that we are easily having a conversation. There is no way you can collaborate with someone without conversation.
Wow.
And you have to understand the language in which you're conversing.
Wow. Faisal, I just want to pick from here. So a lot of people say that, do I learn French just to speak to these guys? What guarantee do I have that when I learn French, I will actually do business, or I will go to France or do business with the French people? What's your take on that? When I talked to a musician and says, I asked him, now that France is talking about the new, France, the new Africa-France relationship, would you learn French and sing in French? And he says, why can't I sing in my language and they also translate in their language? And I says that the French people are very proud of their language. We should also be very proud of our language. Then I said, France is aware of who France is and what France have to be. Unfortunately, not most of us in Africa are aware of, for example, who we are and what we want to be and how we want to be. But they are very specific. They know who they are, they know what they want to be, and so they would always be proud of their language than us. But what I want you to really throw light on is a photographer. I asked another photographer who is a creative person, and he says, just to learn French because I want to go and take pictures in France and talk to people in France, I'm not going to do that. What do you think about this?
I think it's a wrong thing to say or to think like that, unless if you don't have any business or any idea or interest in a country or in a language, because we all don't go to school to be who we study. We go to school because it's a necessity. It helps us to navigate challenges that we face in the future. If you study science and you're doing agriculture, it doesn't mean that what you studied was a waste of time. So if you learn a language and there is an opportunity for you to trade, to engage, to collaborate, then that investment has paid off. It's not a waste of money. And also, I don't think everyone who learns French here is looking at going to Paris. Oh, I'm going to Paris next week. Let me go and do bonsoir. No, I think it's really getting themselves prepared for any opportunity that comes along. If someone comes, I have a job and I want someone who's a bilingual or speaking French and English, and you happen to be one of them, then the opportunity is yours. Maybe the job is not to take you to France, but to go to Hoima and translate for the French company Total that is building a pipeline with Peter Nyeko. So I think these are some of the things that really we learn languages for. And if it happens that there's a big opportunity where there's a direct trade between the two, why not? But I wouldn't target on let me learn French to please the French people. No. I learn it because I think it's a good opportunity for me and a good added value to my CV, to my other opportunities that can come forth.
Okay. Faisal, that said, I'm going to take you straight to this point. We're talking about what does this really mean, or rather, what does it really mean to the French, to the African creatives? The African creatives for a long time have been sort of like finding it difficult to make it to the world stage. You're right? And of late, of course, we're seeing the rising influence and recognition of the African art on the global stage. We talked about it recently. And do you think that this new Africa-France relationship is going to help fasten the process of us getting to the world stage? When people begin to realize, are they genuine about this, recognition on the global stage, or it's just
I wouldn't.
We have to.
I wouldn't look at it that there is a very good. Stairs now. We're going to jump the stairs. The process is going to be the same. They'll still ask you for your bank account and how much you have it to get a visa. Don't even think around that, oh, Macron is going to be like, be kind. No, they're not going to be kind. Why are they investing in Africa? From my opinion, it might not be their case. But how I look at it is like, yes, with everything else that we've talked about, but they're also looking at keeping African youth in their country or in their countries. Because why are people migrating? Why are people getting on the boats and dying in the ocean, in the sea, crossing, trying to get that opportunity to go to France? It's because they don't have opportunities. Our governments and our systems have let them down so much that they find them easier to get on a boat and whether die or not, but at least die trying, getting to Europe. So if you capacitate these young people, if you give them opportunities, if you invest in their ideas, they will definitely stay home. And if you invest in one idea or 10 ideas, it means that you're employing 100 people. Like Eddie here, with your venture. How many people do you give opportunities to work, to earn a living, even if it's small? But you're really assisting a few families to survive on that small thing that you're offering them. So if there are many 10 Eddies that are doing the same in Imbara, in Imbale, in Kapchora, you find that the young people would have woken up to think around getting on the boat or think around migrating to Europe. They have a job to do. They have something to look up to. Then I think the French are looking at it that way. How do we reduce on the numbers of people coming to our shores? How can we help these young people to achieve their dreams? How do we, because the systems have let them down, that's why you find there are so many schools of young people. In Mali, in Guinea, in all these, they are looking at, it's young people. And the old generation has really sat back because for them, yes, they have made their revenues or resources, and now the young people are left to struggle. So I would really think that the opportunities for the young people who have to also be able to think for themselves, and then the French can come in to keep them in their home countries, but supporting their own economies, because they don't have much to offer in France. And when they go there, not all of them are educated to get a good job. Yes, it's a change of environment, the opportunities to get some, 20 euros per hour to work, but that's not the life you want to be. If you want to be an engineer, you want to develop software, you want to create an investment in your own country, they are thinking of how do we support these young people to do that, so that they don't come showing up at our gates all the time.
Wow. Faisal, as we hasten up to the close of the program today, and I want to first of all, if you have a criticism or comment coming for Faisal, please share it. We will definitely read it here. We are talking about the new Africa-France, summit, or the new Afrique relationship that we have. And of course, recently with the summit in Montpellier, we discussed quite a number of these things. Of course, other people believe that the conference was too short to discuss and to exhaust many things. It's hopeful that this conversation will continue. But I think that we need to break this conversation, Faisal, from our local point of view here. We must understand. I mean, I'm not just going to show up to learn French because I must go to learn French because now there's opportunity for me to do business with the Congolese. There's opportunity for me to do business with Senegalese. There's opportunity for me because it's now open, and they're saying there's this many billions of euros being put in Africa. It's meant for us to go, to the next step. Faisal, when we start back to have a discussion and to hear from you guys who are in France. Some of us were in France by just videos, statements, I think, yes. But you guys were there physically and we look at these things. We wanted to basically hear from you. And all through that discussion, you were not there, unfortunately. We would have had your thoughts. It was an open floor. And the ambassador kept on pushing and asking questions. Says, I would like us to think of the next step. What would it be like? What do we do from this point, having gone there and come back? And unfortunately, to my dissatisfaction, so to say, most of the people who went to France didn't have a clear direction, of where, with the exception of very few. I think Paul Rukundo talked something that was a bit sensible. you know, some people didn't find opportunity to do any business, but I'm hearing you having an opportunity to discuss business and you are following it up. Paul Rukundo was the same. You know, there was Peter Nyeko who had a few conversations and it was the same. But a bigger number of people seems to have come back empty-handed. Some of them were language barrier. They couldn't speak French, so they couldn't even engage with the next person on the other side in France to sort of discuss business. What do you think should be the next step going forward from the ambassadors, borrowing from the ambassadors' point of view?
Yeah, I think first of all, I wouldn't blame the people who didn't have come back with anything, because it was a very expose. I mean, to be in this space and so many people, you didn't know. You know, some people, if you didn't know, you could not really do anything or speak to anyone because there was so much. You see, like, because it wasn't only for the creatives, and you know, there were basketballers, footballers, the Drogbas and stuff like that. So it was a spectacle, and that means that if you're not if you're not used to this kind of environment, you get lost in that way, and you need time to adjust to learn on things. So some people really were like overwhelmed by the environment. But what needs to be done? I think some of my conversations with the IF and INPE and AFD, for me, and also the Minister for Economics, I was really emphasizing the fact of balancing investment. And we have to look at where we are. I'm speaking for Uganda, and this is my experience here. When you look at the Francophone African countries, there's a lot of opportunities when it comes to support in the arts, when it comes to opportunities to perform around the world, to tour, to have spaces for performances. And there's only one Institut Français that is in an Anglophone country in the world, and I think that is in Ethiopia. All the other Anglophone countries have Alliance Française. They don't have the institutes, whereby the institutes comes with a package.
So what's the difference between the institute and
the institute is like, you know, there is a theater, there is a performance spaces, it's a whole, you know, it's like an institution. But
so
alliances,
is that like is the institute you know, a direct arm of the government?
Exactly, it gets direct support, but for Alliance to survive and to carry on its programs, it gets a small budget from the embassy or from Total or from, but they don't get direct support. The institute gets direct support from the government, and that gives it much more opportunity to kind of program better, do more engagements, and support more artists. So I was thinking, like, I was asking, why don't we start looking at where do we need to invest? I don't mean that every Anglophone country needs an Institut Français, because also it's a monopoly in a way. When you go to the Anglophone, to the Francophone countries, everything happens at Alliance, at the Institut Français. You know, they do free programs, so they actually occupy the market, and they don't support people. But I was thinking from a point of like, we don't have spaces. And it's not only in Uganda, in Kampala, but when you look around the country, all these new cities don't have spaces. How can we start investing in spaces for the artists, for the creatives to explore and to create work and to develop content? I also look at how do we start exchanging between African countries, you know, not only between the Francophone speaking countries, because you find sometimes that artists are on tour, and they are on touring Institut Français. They are not touring Alliance Française countries or the Anglophone countries, because there is no performance space, because there's, you know, you get what I mean. So how do we start facilitating this mobility of artists within the continent without saying they are Francophone or Lusophone or Anglophone or Spanish speaking? So I think it's that balance for me that I was looking at, and also to assess, because sometimes we get things wrong by just saying this is what we need to do, but yet it's not what you need to do. You need to first understand what is the problem when it comes to the creatives. What are we missing here in Uganda? Do we need spaces? Do we need support for trainings? Do we need capacity building for entrepreneurs? Do we need investment in technology? Do we need investment in systems? So what do we need? And I think if we can first assess ourselves to know where the problems. We have so many things going on, but we don't know what needs to come first, or what needs to come later or afterwards. So I think it will be important that in these next steps, we first focus on each country, like for the embassy and the alliances and all the French agencies, to look at the country and say, okay, who are the young people here? What are they doing? What do they need? What do they have? Because that will give us a very good way of investing the right way. And making these deeper investments, they give us the opportunity to look at long-term engagements. Because my problem is, most of these small projects that they bring are very short-term. I support you, I'll give you 20,000 euros for 16 months and send me a report with this quantitative, qualitative statistics and blah, 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 blah. We don't need that anymore.
Yes.
We don't need that anymore because our generation, we are not like, okay, before, 10 years ago, we needed that because we needed to learn how to do business. Now we've learned how to do business. We don't need to be trained how to do business anymore. We need to be given the opportunities to invest for longer term. Because this short term of workshop, I don't understand why people always run to this workshop money.
Maybe it's a strategy also, maybe it's something that we need to change, because a few section of people actually believe that there's one thing the president talking about this, the other thing is actually seeing it come to a realization. And they say that the mentality from some of these institutes is first, maybe this would be a PR, just stand to, make things happen. Given the pandemic, everybody's trying to bounce back from the superpower point of view. That maybe it's another saying, no, it's actually real. But from what you've said, how can we change? What would be your advice to these people who give small monies and expect a huge number? What should they do different going forward? From your perspective?
I think, to be honest, there are newcomers always who need this kind of support. And I've always engaged with my donors and I tell them, okay, I think I'm not at that level where I used to run around for 5,000 euros and 10,000. They don't, what do you do with 5,000 euros? But I think there are some young organizations, some young entrepreneurs who can really benefit from that money and can take them. That's why we are always financing these young entrepreneurs through our program, the Africa Creative, because we know they need that 20,000. It will take them. But also knowing that the institutions like Baimba, that $20,000 or euros don't mean anything to us. We need bigger amounts to do bigger things, because we are moving our industry and the sector a step forward, because we've matured, we've progressed, we have ascended, they call it ascended from where we were in a very bad way. Now we are looking at the future, and that future means that it needs to be invested in a deeper way for a longer term. So we have to have open conversations on what kind of investment do we need. We were talking about investments before, and like, what kind of investments do we need? Are we talking about, equity? Are we talking about joint ventures? Are we talking about, we can have open conversations, but we don't, I think if we are always like, okay, FD is there, we are there, there's no meeting ground, there's no agenda, there's no opportunity to engage in a conversation, it becomes very difficult. So I've never had a deeper discussion with the French, any French people, although I work with them. But being in Montpellier, it gave me an understanding of a clear image or an understanding of how the government looks at its next steps of engagement. It was very warm, very open and natural and honest and genuine. And you think for yourself, okay, what am I gonna do to meet this engagement, to make it work? So I think we have to assess ourselves. We have to see what we need. We need to know what we need. We are not gonna say the embassy will tell us what to do. We need to know ourselves, and then from
that's what the ambassador was asking for.
We need to know ourselves because even if the embassy has 10 million euros now, we don't know where we have to invest this money. Yet we have so many problems. But we don't know what comes first, what comes next. So if we understand, if we are helped, or if we help ourselves to understand the problems we have, the things we have, the capacities we have, the capacities we need, then there it will be much, much more easier to develop, to create a strategy that we can achieve and invest our money wisely. But now everyone runs there because, I think I can get some money. They write a proposal, they take it's useless. I wouldn't fund that kind of projects. I want to see things that have a shared vision, something that is very overall, contributing to a bigger change.
Wow. Well, that is Faisal right there, coming from the break and breaking things out. Fresh from Montpellier back to Kampala, is talking about, you know, what does this new Africa-France relationship mean for us. The show has come to an end, and we want to say thank you so much for giving us opportunity to be in your sitting room, on your mobile phone, in your computer, and of course
consuming
in your
your data.
Yeah, consuming your data, but giving you valuable information from a creative point of view. Faisal, we're gonna wrap this up quickly. I want to just look into that camera and tell us, you know, the 3 things that we should take home today, that you think we should pick up from this conversation today. What does it mean from the creative and, you know, the festival programmers point of view, which has music, dance, drama, theater, and the writers? Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think 3 things, I don't know. Off-aid, I would say the first thing, the opportunities are there. And we've seen it, we've been shared, we've been told, and we've experienced it. So we think that we need, second, to prepare ourselves to, when the opportunity comes, we take it when we are ready. And I think that's the most important thing. The second thing is that I think it's important we try to learn the language. The language will help us, it will ease the conversation, it will ease the opportunities to collaboration, it will ease our engagement, because once people know that you've made an effort to learn or to understand their language, it makes it easier them even to trust, to know that you have an interest in what is going on. The third thing I would say, don't expect everything from France. They are not your parents, they are not your governments. They are also doing their best. They have so many problems, and this whole continent is looking up to them to support them. I know they have a history, but that's not our fault or the current people. I think we need to play a role ourselves. We need to see that if we want to play at a leveled ground, whereby if I am France, I have the same values and respect and work ethics and integrity like being in Uganda, then we'll do business. So let's see, how do we need to move forward, to level, to work together, to respect, to understand, to integrate, and to be open-minded. That's all. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Faisal, first of all, for giving us opportunity. We need to spread love with the other hand, so we have to spread love to everyone out there. Yeah. Well, the Creative Industry Talk has come to an end today. We want to say thank you very much, everybody, for being part of the show. Until next week, keep it locked. Creative Industry Talk, Eddie Okela, Faisal Kiwewa, signing out.
La cuisine, la mode, les théâtres, les habitués,
La danse et l'architecture.
oh, oh,
Oh, I love France.
oh,
Oh, I speak French.
oh, oh,
Oh, I love France.
oh,
Oh, I speak French.
I love French.
Oh,
I love
I
French.
love France.
I speak French.
Oh,
I speak
I
French.